Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Future Talks. I'm your host, Michael Matsuda, the superintendent of the Anaheim Union High School District. And as our 8,000 listeners know across the country, this show is dedicated to the future of education. And today we're very lucky to have two amazing thought partners, longtime thought partners with the Anaheim Union High School District, Barnett and David Brazer. Would you like to quickly say hi and introduce yourselves?
Go ahead, David.
All right. Well, thank you, Mike. It's great to be here. I'm David Brazer, as Mike said, a longtime friend of Anaheim's and the beneficiary of a wonderful 40-year career in education.
Yes. David, it's great to see you again today. And Mike, thanks for having me. Also a longtime educator. Been focusing on advancing the teaching profession that kids and teachers themselves deserve, and so thrilled to be working with Anaheim, now going on 3 years, the school district that I think can help tell the story of how do we redesign schools and systems in this rapidly changing world.
Yes, and both of you have amazing credentials, both in the academic field, but also more importantly, I would argue the practical area on the ground, working with teachers on school redesign. So let's start with that question. And that's really what the focus of this show is. Redesign in the age of AI, where there are tectonic shifts going on in the job market. We're up to what some people estimate 30 to 40% of jobs disappearing in the United States within the next 5 to 10 years. These are very scary numbers. And the question is, what is school doing about that, right? What are we doing about that? Are we going to just continue to go down where we've gone in this whole 100-year-old factory model of sorting kids as we head toward the Titanic type of icebergs ahead? Or are we going to be a little smarter? And that's really what this focus is. So let's start off about what is redesign. We'll start with you, David. And your, how would you define redesign in this age?
Well, first of all, I think it has to be based on a vision, as you like to say, on a North Star. So you have to know from the beginning, what are you redesigning for? The way I think about it is, how do you want to redesign the way students experience their education, the way they experience school? I think it breaks down in three big buckets for me, that you're looking at redesigning the nature of instruction. That's the classroom experience and the out-of-classroom experience. You're recognizing that as you make change, you're going to put stressors on people's careers and their personalities. And so you have to be able to work on relationships and redesign for better relationships. And the third is organizational, that you're redesigning the organization so that it fits the kind of student experience you're trying to create.
So Barnett, David touched upon this importance of having this common vision and North Star for these three things to happen: instruction, relational, leadership, and organization. What is the North Star in this age of AI, Barnett?
I like three words: deeper, purposeful learning. And I think redesigning schools for deeper, purposeful learning is very different from designing schools to get better test scores or sorting kids for one type of occupation or another, or college or career. If you're about the former, then I think we got to do things very differently in terms of people, tools, and processes.
So I'm glad you said that, because that in those 3 or 4 words you summarize our career preparedness systems framework, our North Star, and which includes deeper learning as well as purposeful learning in the age of AI. So let's go down each of these sort of buckets, David, you've described. And then a little bit deeper, and then I want to really get to the actual work that you're doing in our district, and then sort of end this discussion with how do we scale these work? So let's go with the first one. on instruction. Can we go deeper to that descriptor?
Yes, well, I'm going to defer to Barnett on the actual description of the kind of instruction we're seeking and stick with sort of in my lane, which would be instructional leadership. I think that if you want to change instruction, it takes a lot of people leading in a variety of ways. So if you start from classroom teachers, one of the hallmarks in Anaheim is that you've encouraged teachers to be innovators and to lead others through that innovation. So that's a great place to begin. But we need to also redesign, rethink the roles of department chairs and assistant principals in particular. They have often played predominantly managerial roles and not really given a lot of thought to instruction, with exceptions, of course. And so for this work to get done, department chairs need to be having deep conversations with their teachers about the nature of instruction and instructional change. And assistant principals have to be resources for the departments that they work with to say, well, here are some ways in which we can engage in more innovative practices to get us to deeper learning. And overall, then the principal, instead of trying just to make the trains run on time, the principal really needs to have her finger on instruction that's happening and changing in the school and making sure that that's heading in the right direction with all these different players.
So let's go deeper with instruction, Barnett. What do we mean by instruction focusing on the whole
I'm
child?
gonna start with the science, and a shout out to our colleagues at the Learning Policy Institute, which has been using the science of learning and development to think about the redesign of schools and systems. That science tells us that, first of all, Mike, that talent is plentiful and developing young people's cognitive, social, emotional, and physical well-being is not a detractor to academic achievement and what we've sought to support kids for in our schools, but actually an accelerant of it. And for us to do that at scale means we got to think very differently about the curriculum. Less is more. We got to think about assessment. Less is more. We got to think about technology and how kids can actually use it to go deeper, to learn more, to get more feedback, and create more time for teachers to support them, to be creative. And this is what we got to begin to think about when it comes to school redesign, Mike.
I would like to jump in there for a second, because what Barnett is then starting to lay out is the responsibilities and sort of the new job description for these other players that I've mentioned, department chairs, assistant principals, and principals, is that they need to be working with teachers to make sure that the creativity is happening, that we're headed toward the North Star, that we're all moving in the same direction. They can't just defer and say, well, I'm not an expert in the content or whatever it is. They need to be they need to develop themselves to understand what whole child education means so that they can support it, nurture it, and grow it.
Yeah, it's got to be the learning, the teaching and learning has got to be grounded in the first feature of LPI's high school redesign report, positive developmental relationships. And I will say, I mean, your teachers do an amazing job teaching 195 kids a day in the high school and up to 220 in the junior high school. But I think we got to rethink how we utilize people. So, one, a small group of teachers in a team work with the same group of a cohort of kids over time, how those cohorts of kids move together, and how kids at the upper grade levels can begin to help the kids at the lower grade levels, how teachers who are in teams now don't have to know everything about every child to deliver on whole child education because they are working as a team with distributed expertise.
So you jumped into the third bucket there in terms of the organization, Barnett.
I never go linear, Mike. You know me well.
No, okay. So I want to go back into the instructional piece, and I'd like you to talk about the work AUHSD has undertaken for the last several years, starting 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, at Savannah High School with the capstone, and how that's evolved now that we have these performance task assessments, two required per year per teacher, a minimum of two. These are like big project-based learning, hopefully grounded in street data. But that is really the core of what we're trying to do instructionally in the classroom, to create these norms and habits of mind as teachers develop their lessons, and through the lens of these performance task assessments, knowing that at the end of the day, we want this to be part of the student capstone embedded in this 6-year plan. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, yeah. In fact, I can go back to some of those structures that I just mentioned and describe that if you want to, and you will, utilize PTAs as kind of the cornerstone curricular and assessment.
And please use, don't just say PTAs, so performance tasks, okay?
Performance task assessments. Yes, it's not the Parent-Teacher Association, right? But if you want those PTAs to be the cornerstone of your curriculum and assessment process, and the outcomes with the capstones or is evidence that the kids can take with them to whether college or career. If you want that to happen at scale, then we need to think very differently about how teachers and kids are working with each other, creating more opportunities for teachers to go deeper and know those kids better, for kids to know themselves better, and for us to match kids with teachers, the expertise that the kid needs and the talents that the teacher has. All of that can't be done if we have every teacher teaching in their isolated classroom by themselves in their 50-minute classroom period, teaching those same one kid after another, one group of kids, one after another, Mike. That's how redesign can really help us deepen and accelerate the cornerstone of what AUHSD is all about with the PTAs.
May I share an instructional dream that Barnett and I have batted back and forth? We've been talking about the teaching teams at Orangeview and Western, and I know we're going to talk about them more later, but this idea that you have a group of 4 teachers who teach the core these 4 teachers teach the same collection of 180 kids. If they constructed interdisciplinary PTAs, that would be a great avenue into deeper learning, because kids would start to see the connections among the different content areas. They would also take the burden off themselves by doing the team planning and not having to design a PTA, a performance task assessment, in isolation. But instead, they're designing it with colleagues, they're assessing with colleagues, and they're redesigning with colleagues for better effect. That would do so many things to strengthen the teaching and learning experience. It's hard to list them, but some of them would include that teachers who are particularly good at authentic assessments represented by performance tasks would help teachers who don't really understand how to put together a really good authentic assessment. And on the back end, they would also learn from each other how to better assess the final products from students and how to respond to students who are at various levels of achievement. So making this time and space for that kind of collaboration pays dividends in multiple ways.
You have some of the best sports teams in Orange County, athletic teams, Mike, particularly at Western. I know, forgive me, other high schools for not shouting you out right now. But any good coach who's successful selects the kids to be on the field or the court at the same time because of the different expertise they have.
Well, and it's because of the assessment, right? This is an assessment. A PTA is an assessment. So let's go and talk about the difference maker that having access to AI to sort of curate and synthesize, I mean, to me, it's a big game changer. You gentlemen want to comment on that?
Yeah, I will do it really quickly here. Because I lived through the early days of portfolio assessment in the early 90s, Mike, when we were working to try to help move away from test scores and move toward more deeper learning that could be authentically assembled by a wide variety of evidence. Teachers had mounds and mounds of notebooks of evidence of kids' work and no way to make sense of it. AI can actually help teachers synthesize rapidly, and kids help them synthesize what they know rapidly to help put together a much more compelling and useful set of data around what kids know and can do.
Let me go back to the teaching team for an illustration. If you're looking at the final products from performance tests for 180 kids, you'd want to know several things. One is you'd want to know, how did each student do, and what did they learn, and how do they think about it? But you also want to know, how did our cohort of 180 students do? How did they think about their learning as a collective? And what does it mean for this community that we're creating? Now, AI comes into that because that's a mound of data, whether it's electronic or on paper, doesn't matter. It's a huge pile of data. But I can use AI prompts to ask questions like, what's the most prevalent 5C that was elevated in this particular performance task? Was it communication? Was it compassion? How much did it vary? I can ask questions about the degree to which students understood the interconnectedness of math and science, or social studies and math. So we couldn't do that before AI. And it's not AI doing the grading. It's teachers using the tool to query the data to learn what students learned, how many of them learned it, and how deeply they learned it.
Mike, one of the key features of school redesign is advisory and kid talk. And because you go to a new type of bell schedule, and perhaps you are teaching less content so kids can learn more, you're creating space in the day for those teacher teams, right, David, to come around the table and look at that data every week and hone in on who needs what and when and where and how. And this, Mike, takes us right to another major initiative of the district and the state of California, and that's the community schools work and the need for us to have more integrated student supports. And this is, in that kind of a structure, the teaming, the looping, the AI-enhanced data analysis gives us a chance to really create those supports for kids and create opportunities for teachers who are really good at reaching out and connecting to parents to do so in a much more effective and powerful way.
So arguably, AUHSD is using redesign and the research behind it through groups like LPI with groups like AIEDU to enhance and uplift teaching and learning. But ultimately, it's about career preparedness and jobs. Could one of you comment on how we are redesigning experiences for students who before were required, maybe if they wanted a certificate for pre-nursing or pre-dental, where it would take 80, 90 hours of required unpaid internships. And this is where, as you know, we're in a very low income district, where that kid would be working after school or on Saturdays for free, getting good experience, but trying to manage and navigate high school. What are we doing that's new about that?
David, you want to jump in or you want me to?
I have a lot to say. I'm just trying to be polite. So first of all, I think it's important to recognize that Anaheim, through the Anaheim Collaborative and other mechanisms, has done an amazing job over the last 8 to 10 years in creating career and technical education pathways, but also tying those pathways to work-based learning. So that work-based learning takes 3 forms, roughly. In-school information and mentoring in that way, in groups, one-on-one mentoring. But what you're leading up to, Mike, is the work-based internships that through your grant work are paid internships. So that the internship is critical for students to learn the possibilities in the world of work on an everyday basis. But the paid internship is a critical recognition, and this goes to community schools, that it's not fair to take kids who live in poverty and say, well, we don't think you should work in the summer and earn money because this internship experience would be much more valuable to you.
So I'm going to cut in because it's an end. It's yes, we would like to get to paid internships and also get to certificates of like nursing certificates, right? However, there is another way because paid internships are very expensive, right? And we're looking at scalability. A lot of districts do not have access to that. There is another way forward, which we are working on in Barnett. You want to explain that way forward, the work that we're doing in Savannah?
Well, what you can do is start thinking about the school day and the curriculum very differently. And this is where school redesign comes in. And by the way, Mike, you already have some of this going on with Cambridge Virtual Academy. If you think about the lack of lockstep schedule of curriculum that those kids experience. You can.
So I'm going to jump in and answer my own question. So what we're doing is concurrent enrollment with Cambridge Virtual Academy. We're beginning to do that. So going back to the kid in poverty that's having to do 90 hours of unpaid internship to get their certificate from the ROP pathway program that they're in, let's say it's a health pathway or nursing pathway, prior to what we're doing with concurrent enrollment, that kid was out of luck. They had to just do it and to get and bear the burden. Now we are re-enrolling them in a virtual academy, a virtual school, while they're at their regular high school. And for that one period, let's say in English is probably the easiest area to integrate across these different pathways where they're going to be re-enrolled and where they can get credit, concurrent high school English credit, because they're an independent study. It's not having to take roll every day. It's independent study. And get credit, high school credit for their English class at Savannah High School at the same time meeting the requirements of the internship. That's how we're extending the day after school or on Saturday.
And you can accelerate it, Mike, when you think about the inside of that school day, the 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock day, very differently. Imagine schools designed in where there are instructional blocks of time where teachers and kids are together face to face, but it's not required that they be there every day because so much of what they're doing is in some hybrid teaching learning situation, and they have a chance to work in the morning or work in the afternoon and still get.
But this is a problem in the state because right now we are limited in how many students can be enrolled in independent study, and it's not easy. I mean, I would say for our state policymakers, we really need to look at making it easier for schools and kids to pivot back and forth between their regular comprehensive school and getting into these virtual situations. And then I think the other area of redesign is the work that we've done, David, you had mentioned with the collaborative and with dual enrollment. Does any of you want to comment about the positives, the opportunities, but also the challenges with dual enrollment?
Well, one of the things we've discovered in our work with extraordinary principals and teachers of the district is that even when you have strong connections with community college, in particular in dual enrollment, the community college professor or faculty member and the high school teacher may not be on the same pedagogical page, so to speak, Mike. But imagine one day soon, and this is where the Anaheim Collaborative can come in and help us forge such strong relationships between the community college and the district that you have individuals, teachers, and that are in joint appointments, serving in kind of both one leg in each institution. I think that would be a powerful element to add to the mix. And by the way, Mike, just to give a shout out to one of your RISE school districts getting ready to join the work in system redesign. Right, David? Just yesterday, we learned in a conversation with Roseburg, a district in Oregon, where they actually already doing this. There are individuals that both are employed by the community college as well as the high school district in a career pathway model.
I love that. I'm looking forward to learning from other districts. David, we started this conversation with 3 buckets that you identified, and you wanted to focus on the relational aspect. Let's, the moments we have left, let's take a dive into that and the challenges of working on the ground at Western and Orangeview, and understanding how important those relational intelligence is in terms of both the teacher leaders and the admin leaders. What are your takeaways from that?
Well, the first one is that our hunches in the beginning that we needed to work with the redesign team first on their social emotional side. That proved to be very true. We spent very valuable time essentially asking ourselves as a group, where are you in your career? How do you feel about the present circumstance? And where do you want to go? And we didn't talk about what structures do you want, what kind of bells, and none of that. It was the first half day was all about where are you as a person? That set the stage for caring about one another, and they began to care about one another, and that grew. What we didn't know in the beginning, what I hadn't realized until just a couple of weeks ago, is that I'm going to try a metaphor. We were essentially asking the Orangeview and Western teachers to leave their hometown, to go live somewhere else, metaphorically. So you're going to say goodbye to your old way of teaching and your old organization, because you're going to be a 7 through 12 school now, and you're going to teach differently, and you're going to be configured differently. Some people are excited by that, but not everybody. And so what we struggled through was the people who were homesick and were angry about being homesick. And we managed pretty well, but we could have anticipated that, I think, better by saying, you as a redesign team need to understand that you're leading people into a very difficult emotional circumstance for them if they've been teaching for even 5 years, and now you're telling them that the world is going to be different. So I do think that this is where you need very adept leadership that understands the relationship pieces without coddling people, and yet remaining supportive.
Yeah, and I will add that we need to more formally, Mike, do more of what we did with the 25 to 30 teachers at that first retreat in July of 2024 with the entire teaching staff in terms of helping them find themselves in the features of redesign. I think it was very difficult for folks that were not deep in the work of the design from the get-go to see themselves, and they kept thinking about that they would have to do the same type of teaching learning they've always done in a new set of contexts with new courses to teach. And that just really upset the apple cart in a very nice way of putting it, I will tell you that.
So there's a lot of psychology to this. And going back to the metaphor of leaving your home, my question is, David, weren't people concerned about where are we going? We're leaving our home, but where are we going? This, to me, this leads back to the vision and mission of what we're trying to get to. David, you want to comment on it? Because there's a deep psychology here in terms of trying to move an entire staff.
Yes, I agree that it was deeply psychological and very, very challenging. So we wanted to show people where we thought we were heading and explain why we're heading there. Now, the easy handle for Anaheim is the North Star of the CPSF, because that's been so prominently promoted. But it's not right to assume that that's sort of present in everyone's mind when they're going through this process. And so we made some attempts, the redesign team made some attempts to show this is what Kid Talk can look like. This is what advisory can look like. And that helped, but we didn't solve the basic puzzle that most people don't have faith that it's going to be okay. So unless they can, as Barnett said, see themselves in the features, see themselves in a new role as in advisory, for example, they're not going to feel confident moving forward. Now, I'll be honest with you, I don't yet know how to do that.
But isn't that, Barnett, the challenge ahead? Because more and more people are talking about the need for school redesign, but they don't really understand until they've lived it and gone through it, as we have, how difficult this is. Barnett, we're getting close to the end here, but begin to start, commenting.
The advice I would have for moving forward, and Mike, we're going to take this advice as we continue to work with the district and several new schools that are coming on board with redesign, is that I think we've got early on help people see what teaching is like when you are part of a team, just like you're part of the basketball team and a football team, where you do not have to throw the football and catch it simultaneously. And I think if we could help people get there first, then the other part of, and the psychological, sociological side of moving organizational change will be a whole lot easier.
It's interesting that I talked to a teacher that is not from Western Orangeview. He's actually from CVA, but he's working with the head football coach and basketball coach to have students more intentionally input their reflections on the game into cadence, right? And because that's what they do, Barnett, you're a big sports guy. That's what sports people do all the time. They're always doing reflections, right? And so this teacher went to the head coach and said, "You always do this. Why don't you do it more intentionally into eCadence and have the AI, synthesize it?" So they're working on that, and that could be a big exemplar to move the rest of the teachers. Final moments, David. What do you think about that?
I think it's a fantastic idea. I think that the more that teachers engage in the metacognition and collaboration and all these other pieces that we want from students, the more they engage in that themselves, the more you're going to see that in the classroom, because they'll see the value, they'll feel the value of it.
School redesign should not be all that difficult. I laugh when I say that, Mike, but everything that needs to be done with school and system redesign in the district is already in place in some place. It's just not fully in place in every school in a way that it touches every kid. And I think that is a big lesson that we need to take forward as we think about the work, both in our district, but others with whom we're working.
You always go back to the masters, right, with Peter Senge and talking about a learning organization around a changed mental model. And that's what we're trying to do here in terms of rethinking schools, rethinking redesign. And we could not get there as quickly as we are moving, because I believe we are moving quickly, without the Barnett Berries and the David Brazers of the world. So I want to thank you again on behalf of our 25,000 7 through 12 students and their futures.
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your really sage and wise experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
It was a great pleasure. Thank you.